G'day, Ryan. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. How you going, Greg?
Very well. Good to have you back. And the reason we do have you back and chatting this week, earlier this week, you did put out a short note on El Salvador adopting Bitcoin for the first time, and then lo and behold, Bitcoin crashes just on the day that happened. So let's talk about that. There's been a fair bit going on. So maybe we can just start with a brief recap of the note you put out earlier on this week.
Yeah. So basically, as everyone probably knows by now, El Salvador had it'd been in the works for a little while that they were going to make Bitcoin legal tender in their country. At the moment, the US dollar is legal tender in El Salvador. They don't actually have their own currency. They've not had it for quite a long time, over a decade, I think. But the new law, which was proposed, was going to make Bitcoin legal tender also, and that actually went live earlier this week. So it's an amazing thing to think that the first country, the first nation state in the world, has actually made Bitcoin legal tender, which is a legal definition of currency, which throws up a whole lot of interesting questions as this goes forward, because other countries are sometimes mutually obliged to honor payments in another country's legal tender. So this is going to be interesting how this plays out. But as I sort of alluded to in the note, there's a lot of powers that be that are fighting back against this. So institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, even nation states like America and things like that, because obviously any huge move globally to a Bitcoin standard would take away immense amounts of their power, because right now these are the bodies that control currency. So as I said in the note, expect there to be what we call FUD, which is, casting doubts on Bitcoin, which we get all the time, but expect that to ramp up a notch. And lo and behold, things were looking pretty rosy with the Bitcoin price. We're about 52K, over 50K. People were getting excited about 70K next. And on the day that El Salvador formally moved to the Bitcoin standard, the Bitcoin price plummeted, like almost as much as 20% at one stage, down to like 43,000. As we record this, it's about 46,000 now. It's recovered a bit. And it's just funny how that plays out, because some interesting things happening. I don't want to get conspiracy theorist about this, but the dump in price came from the derivatives market, from the futures market, which is a leveraged market, which is a lot easier to manipulate the price. At the same time as they were heavily selling Bitcoin to make the price go down, there was a series of what they call denial of service attacks on the major cryptocurrency exchanges like Bittrex, Binance, Coinbase, all those ones. And a denial of service attack is like intentionally spamming a website to stop it from operating. It just really slows down how it operates. And you can imagine when prices are moving fast and these denial of service attacks are going on, it makes it very hard for any traders or investors to react. And it's just very coincidental that happened at the exact time that the price was plummeting on the derivatives exchanges.
So in effect, they increased the supply and then took away the ability of the exchanges to provide the demand to
correct. Yeah. So that's my feeling why the fall was so steep. Eventually, the exchanges managed to deal with that. Some of them paused their platforms, reset things, and got it back online. And when that happened, lo and behold, the price actually recovered a little bit, and the fall started to stop. But look, the other conspiracy theory is that this is some sort of coordinated, on some level, attack. Because imagine the headlines of the day would have been, first nation state adopts Bitcoin. Instead, if anyone reads the mainstream press's reporting of El Salvador adopting Bitcoin, it was along the lines of Bitcoin price plummets 20%. El Salvador takes a massive gamble on Bitcoin, and it felt to me like the powers that be, it was an attack of sorts, but it was mainly an attempt to control the narrative, because it made the reporting of this story become a negative thing, whereas in fact it's actually an amazingly big deal. It's the first time ever, I think, or that I can remember, that a country has openly defied the US dollar-centric system and got away with it. I talked in the report about how Saddam Hussein was trying to move to a sort of euro-based oil system, and we know what happened there. And there was rumors that Gaddafi was trying to do a Pan-African gold currency, and obviously he got ousted pretty quickly. So the fact that this small Central American country has managed to, they've kept the US dollar as legal tender, but they've managed to also insert Bitcoin as part of this, is an amazing achievement. And Edward Snowden, who's the famous whistleblower, US whistleblower, he put out a note today saying that the game theory of Bitcoin suggests that other nation states will start to adopt this quicker because there's an advantage if you do that. If this is the future and you wait, you come at a disadvantage. As countries like El Salvador and Ukraine just legalized Bitcoin the other day. Other countries that you might be comparable with will leapfrog ahead of you if you don't adopt it sooner. So there's this sort of game theory that says that once the first domino falls, other dominoes will start to fall soon as well. So we'll see if that happens. Like I said in the note as well, expect there to be a lot of pushback, and I think the Bitcoin price was the start of that pushback and the denial of service attacks. And yeah, let's see how it plays out over the next few months and weeks. And that's why I said the note though, keep dollar cost averaging through it no matter what.
Yep.
That's the main way to take advantage of this volatility.
Couple of points there. I think the first question that comes to mind is that you mentioned, the previous attempts to try and get around the US dollar as the global reserve currency have just been quashed pretty quickly. I suppose Bitcoin is one of the only systems that can do it because it's such a decentralized system, right? Like that there's not much that the powers that be, if we put it that way, can do to really stop this apart from try and control the narrative. And that brings me to the second point. I think we do ourselves a bit of a disservice by even referring to this as a conspiracy theory or potential conspiracy theory. To me, it is so obvious that this is how the narrative has tried to be controlled through all sorts of things. I mean, this is just one example of it. And I've been following gold for 20 years. So I've seen how price moves, sometimes counterintuitively in order to create a narrative that, I thought gold was safe, but maybe it's not now because it's moved this way. And I think, gold has been the nemesis of the US dollar for decades. And now we're moving into this situation where the use of derivatives, which is not Bitcoin itself, but the derivative form of Bitcoin, is being used to try to control the price. So yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
It's an interesting point, and that's the main difference with Bitcoin this time, is that it is not an asset that lives on the existing financial infrastructure. It lives on its own network, which is an amazing advantage. Because one thing I noticed, and I'm going to check on this today again, but as all this sell-off was happening with the Bitcoin price, I was looking at the on-chain analytics, and this is something I can see happening publicly on the blockchain. Bitcoin is still moving off exchange addresses, and that's been happening from the rise from 30K to 50K, which suggests that no matter what's happening in this derivatives market, which can drive short-term price movements, whoever's buying Bitcoin is moving it into cold storage, which suggests accumulators are accumulating through these falls. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin, is that no matter what people try to do in a derivatives market, there is that source of truth on the public blockchain. And I think, like I said, the denial of service attacks on the major exchanges exacerbated falls. There might have been a dip. People who've been in markets long enough know you usually sell the news, buy the rumor, sell the news. You are probably going to get a pullback. We did a huge rally from 30K to 52K without really stopping. So you're going to get a pullback at some stage. The timing of it was suspicious, and the way it happened and the extent of it, that's where which we'll call conspiracy, but that's where the manipulation of sorts maybe came in. The other thing to note about Bitcoin being a network, and this is important to how El Salvador are using Bitcoin, right? They have bought some for their own treasury. I think, it was amazing seeing President Bukele basically trolling the IMF on these price falls because they bought 400 Bitcoin. And as the price fell and the exchanges came back on, he goes, "Oh, thanks for the discount. I've just bought another 150 Bitcoins for our treasury." So El Salvador bought 550 Bitcoins, which isn't cheap stations, but for them, it's a sizable investment, I suppose. But the way El Salvador are looking at Bitcoin, I think, is the network of Bitcoin. So they've released a wallet, which is funded by public money, called the Chivo wallet. And that lives on the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2 on Bitcoin, which allows cheap, fast transactions. So the main use case now is allowing remittances from abroad, which make up 20% of their economy, to come into El Salvador, where it will probably convert into US dollars pretty much instantly. I don't think there's going to be too many El Salvadorans holding Bitcoin as an investment, because a lot of them don't have capacity to do that. So they'll be basically the rails of the Bitcoin network will be used so money can come into the country and it'll be converted into dollars. And there are some question marks on how this is being constructed. And I don't want to like put the president on a pedestal, because I think there's some issues about the way they're doing it that need to be looked at. And some people call him a tyrant or a dictator, and maybe he is. I honestly don't know that. But what I do know is that even if he's letting in Bitcoin as a network come in on his terms now, it opens the door to things that are well out of his control. So although he might be advocating certain measures now to introduce Bitcoin through a public wallet and things like that, once you're in that network, an open source network, you can't control how people use it over time. So the challenge for Bitcoiners to El Salvadorians, because I know a lot of them might be a bit of trepidation with this because it's something brand new, is to try and make sure we've got their back in terms of making sure the open source, privacy-free features of Bitcoin are adhered to, and give them the options to tap into that if the president strays from that path in any way. So yeah, that's the interesting thing, and I'm sort of mentioning this because I'm preparing for people that the fact that there's no guarantee that the El Salvador experiment will work, because you've got a factor there of a president who we don't know what his real motivations are. But the deeper point is, once it's in your country, once it's in that system's there, it goes beyond the control of any tyrant or dictator, whether it's on the left or the right or wherever. So that's the key thing to always remember. The deeper good is, once Bitcoin's there, once it's in your network, it can't be stopped.
I hope you enjoyed that preview from New Money Investor. To get access to the full video and much more, please click on the link below.